Good morning, second graders. This is going to be your math lesson for today, lesson 15-2, Polygons and Angles. So if you will find page 865 in your math textbook, that's what we're going to be working on today. So last week we looked at plane shapes and we counted their number of sides and their vertices, and then we named the shape. Today's lesson is going to be similar, except we're going to be counting the angles in each shape. Okay, so let's start here by looking at the solve and share. It says, look at the two plane shapes below. How are they alike? How are they different? What is the name for both shapes? So the first thing we can do is count the number of sides on both shapes. So I see that this shape has 4 sides and this shape has 4 sides. So that would be one way that they are alike. Okay, and we can think back to our lesson from last week, and a shape that has 4 sides is called a quadrilateral. So there's 2 things that we could write down for how they are alike. They both have 4 sides and they're both quadrilaterals. Okay, so now if we're looking at how are they different, let's look at the length of the sides. Okay, for example, this shape here has 4 sides, and I notice that all 4 sides are the same. They all are equal lengths, okay? When I look at this shape, all 4 sides are not the same length. These 2 sides, these parallel sides here, are shorter than these 2 sides. So 2 of the sides are shorter in length, okay? And then if we are going to name the shapes, okay? Well, they are both quadrilaterals, but more specifically, a shape that has 4 equal sides is called a square, and a shape that has 2 short sides and 2 long sides would be called a rectangle. So I'm going to put this page up here, and if you want to pause your video here so you can copy this down, that would be great. But we have 2 ways they are alike, and then 2 ways they are different, and then I wrote the name for each shape up above. Okay, so pause your video here and get this copy down, and then when you're ready, you can move on. All right, so if you're ready to move on, we're going to turn our paper over. And I want to look at the vocab here up at the top real quick. So a polygon, remember, is a closed plane shape with 3 or more sides. Okay, and we know the names for all of these polygons up here. That's what our lesson was on last week, okay? These are examples of shapes that are not polygons, because polygons cannot have open sides and they cannot have curved sides. So this little boy here is telling us that a circle would not be a polygon. Even though it is closed, circles have curved sides, so they would not be considered polygons, okay? So polygons are going to be our triangles, our squares, our pentagons, our hexagons. Okay, all of the shapes that we named last week. And then angles, all polygons have angles. They have the same number of angles as sides and vertices. So I have marks here for my vertices, and you can see everywhere there's a vertice, there's also an angle. So last week we learned that if we count the number of sides and the number of vertices, those 2 will match. And now we're going to add angles in. Those will also be the same. Okay, now if an angle forms a square corner, we call that a right angle. This square has 4 right angles, and a pentagon has 2 right angles. All right, so on your lesson today, you're going to be counting the number of angles and then naming the shape. So I want to review from last week here. I'm going to move these papers. So if we're looking at the number of angles, a shape that has 3 angles, the same as a shape that has 3 sides or 3 vertices, is called a triangle. A shape that has 4 angles is called a quadrilateral. 5 angles would be pentagon, and 6 would be our hexagon. So you can either flip back to your assignment from last week, or if you still have your graphic organizer that we made during our Zoom meeting last week, that might help you on today's assignment, or refer back to this right here. So when you count your angles on your shapes today, depending on how many angles there are, this would be the name of the polygon or shape, okay? I'm going to do number 1 here as an example. If I circle my angles, I have 5, and then I know a shape with 5 angles is called a pentagon. Okay, so you're going to do that on 1 through 4. You're going to count the angles and name the shape. 5 through 10, you're doing the exact same thing. Count the angles and name the shape. And number 11, let's look at number 11 together. It says, draw a polygon with 2 right angles and 2 angles that are not right angles. Name the shape you draw. So his little hint here is, how many angles will your polygon have in all? Well, 2 right angles plus 2 other angles are going to give us 4 angles. So we know that our shape's going to have 4 angles, which means it's going to have 4 sides and 4 vertices. The first shape that pops in my head when I think of 4 is a square. So I'm just going to draw a square real quick. You don't have to draw this on your paper. But if I draw a square and I look at my angles, they're all square corners, which means this shape has 4 right angles. So that's not going to match what they're asking us to draw. Okay? But I could draw the bottom here of a square. So I still have my 2 right angles. And then instead of making these 2 sides the same length, what if we made this side longer than this side and then went ahead and connected those 2 sides? Does that give me 2 more angles here that are not right angles? Okay, so this would be the shape that would work. This polygon has 2 right angles and 2 angles that are not right angles. And a shape with 4 angles is called a quadrilateral. Okay, so let's turn and look at the back side here. I have a few things underlined for you to pay attention to. On number 12, they want to know what plane shapes are sewn together in a soccer ball. So they want to know, what do we call the black shape and what's the name for this white shape? So count the number of angles or sides and write those 2 names. Okay, 2 answers on that one. Number 13 wants to know what the honeycomb shape is. And it asks you to name the shape and tell how many angles it has. So 2 answers again on number 13. Number 14, make sure you read this one carefully because it's asking you for 3 things. It wants you to draw a polygon that has 7 angles, tell how many sides the polygon has, and how many vertices it has. So make sure you read this one carefully and answer all 3 parts, okay? And then number 15 here, they want you to name this shape and then write 3 things that describe the shape. So I helped you out here. You're going to name the shape and then tell me how many sides, vertices, and angles this shape has, okay? So some of you have been doing the homework and practice pages, and that's great, okay? That just gives you some extra practice, but you don't have to do the homework and practice page. Your assignment for lesson 15-2 is numbers 1 through 15, okay? Remember, you can use your graphic organizer, or you can always pause the video and use this when you are working on your assignment today, okay?